Hello and welcome to Cardio Live. I'm James Baggot and joining me today is CAP HBI's Director of Valuations. It's Derren Martin. Derren, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Forgot my script right at the start there. Anyway, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us once again for another update on the used car market. Now, January was pretty strong, wasn't it? It was just a 0.1% drop.
Yeah.
February certainly feels pretty strong to me, looking at the prices at auctions that we've been to over the last few weeks and what's actually been happening out there.
Yeah, so we've got a small movement up, 0.7% up at 3 years. It's the first movement we've up in 11 months. So it's definitely a positive there. It feels strong. It feels relatively stable when you look back at sort of previous Februaries. We kind of I've put a section in our editorial that is about it's the actually a section from the editorial in February 2020 when just before the world all changed, and interestingly it feels very very similar to that pre-COVID time. So it's definitely gone back to sort of more seasonal behaviour. Interesting thing about that February one that we wrote in 2020, there's absolutely no mention of COVID in it, even though it was around 3 or 4 weeks later. So yeah, a bit of a history lesson, but yeah. So it feels good. It feels strong. The dealers we're speaking to are relatively upbeat. The data that we're seeing, I mean, we've had some comments that we should be moving values up by more, but when you look at the data, it is a little bit mixed. So not everything is going up as tends to happen. So it's certainly not another 2021 when values going up ridiculously, but it's a nice, steady, strong market.
Yeah, we'll dive into some of the detail in a moment. But I mean, like I say, I've been out at a few auctions in the last few weeks, and actually they felt very, very competitive. A lot of the stuff that we were bidding on went for far over cap than we were expecting. How does this February compare to normal? I mean, I know you've just mentioned there the COVID years, and obviously we saw things that go up a lot. Cast your mind back a little bit before that. What normally happens in a normal February, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, we've had times where values have gone up, but the movement up is generally quite a small one. So I think this is since we introduced Cap Live, which is always our reference point back in 2012. We've had, I think, 4 times. This is the fourth strongest February this time around. So it's not like through the roof, but it's steady. We've had some times where values have dropped slightly, but it's generally a small movement either way. We've not had. It's not a month where values can tend to drop sharply or increase sharply. It's usually January is sort of you get maybe zero movement or a very very small movement either way, and February is usually slightly better than January as the market kind of gets going, and then. Yeah, March we would expect to be similar to February as well. So it's all positive. I think it's a good thing that values are going up gently rather than going up dramatically, because if you go up dramatically, you could tend to have a sharper fall when more volume comes back into the market. So obviously, values dropped by just over 10% in the final quarter of last year. So we're still at values are still at a level that means they're not going to go up by that sort of 10% that we dropped out, because we've had inflation since those increases in 2021. So values are around about 12 or 13% above where they were at the start of 2021. So we've set a new level for used car values, and we don't feel that there's going to be anything dramatic sort of increases or decreases going forward. It feels very stable.
There'll be people watching this who will be looking at the wider economy, seeing that we've recently had the news that we entered recession for the last part of 2023. Looking forward, it's still looking reasonably uncertain, isn't it? Interest rates are still high. There'll be some people wondering how, in that sort of market, used car prices can go up. Perhaps we could just sort of explain that.
Well, used car prices went up in 2021 it was the perfect storm, but it was generally a lack of being able to get cars from new cars because of semiconductor issues, less cars in the market. When you look at it now, 2.5 million fewer cars in the market than there would have been if there hadn't been for COVID and all of the shortages that appeared afterwards. So those cars are never going to appear. There's less cars in the market, especially within that sort of what's 3 4 year old area. people still need cars. Used cars are a necessity purchase as well as an aspirational purchase. So there's still a requirement for vehicles. People still need to change. There was obviously a little bit of concerns over cost of living in the final quarter of last year. That's when values dropped. So you've got some pent up demand from that now. So you've got more people coming back into the market. Retailers more confident. They lost a little bit of confidence in Q4 as well. So they're back in buying. They've got to satisfy that retail demand. So as I say, yeah, it does tend to be a necessity purchase, and shortages. So it's all about supply and demand with regards to used car values. Demand is pretty strong at the moment, and supply is not through the roof. Obviously, we've got Easter coming up. That can tend to be a bit of a period where values do drop because people don't necessarily want to go out and buy vehicles over that time. They're going away on holiday. They're doing other things with their leisure time. And also you've got March new car registrations, which will lead to more volume in the market. So at the moment, it's all nice and steady. That might change going forward, but we don't think any drops even from sort of April onwards. We do think the market might drop a little bit then, but nothing untoward, and it will be very gentle. And hopefully we're in for a pretty stable year. For those reasons, really, demand will be steady, and supply won't be through the roof because of those shortage of vehicles in the market.
So, Derren, where is the strength in the market at the moment? I mean, in terms of the detail, I mean, what's performing well? I mean, firstly, can we talk about the ages of cars in particular, and then we'll move on to fuel type?
Yeah, so age wise of cars, the bottom end isn't quite as strong, but there's still an upward movement there, 0.2% up at 1 year. So that's that 0.7 at 3 years. The weaker end is actually the older age, which is it's the first time that's happened for a while, but 10 years plus has dropped by 0.6%. I mean, that's negligible in pound note terms, but it has dropped. There's We've seen within the data there's not so many people interested in high mileage cars, so that's had a little bit of effect there. And maybe they've just sort of peaked that because they have been quite strong at that older age. So in the middle, so their strongest age point is actually that 3 year point, and that makes sense because there's fewer of those cars around. So that's been performing the best. We've seen city cars and super minis performing the best. They're our two strongest sectors. Again, that makes sense. There's a lot of SUVs out there. If you don't necessarily want an SUV, you want a smaller vehicle, then there's not so many of those around anymore. Obviously, they don't make the Fiesta anymore, things like that. All those sort of dynamics in the market. Retailers are also very happy to stock city cars and super minis. They know they can stock a couple of those for maybe the price of an SUV, and they will sell quickly off their forecourts as well. So that's been the two strongest mainstream sectors anyway. Super minis actually gone up by 2.4%, so that's a pretty strong area.
Yeah.
And you've got some examples of cars that have sort of gone up 5% in there. i10, i20, Clios have performed well. So Corsa as well. So that's done quite well. Fuel type, it's a bit more mixed. Petrol vehicles seem to be the flavour of the month. You sort of your mainstream petrol. I don't think pushing the ZEV mandate back, which the government did last year, sorry, not the ZEV mandate, pushing the ban back, and keeping the ZEV mandate has helped necessarily. It's put pressure on manufacturers, but there's lots of consumers that aren't necessarily thinking, well, I've definitely got to go out and buy an EV now. It's too far away. They are buying them in more volume, but maybe not enough to mop up some of those EVs. So they're buying petrol cars. EVs, that's dropped by 1.7%. So that is the weakest fuel type. Obviously, you cast your minds back a year. It's nowhere near as bad as it was a year ago. And it's fairly, I mean, we were looking at what we've dropped and what we haven't this month, and around 2/3 of values have dropped in EVs. Almost a quarter have stayed level, but we put 10 or 11% of things up. So it remains very mixed in there, and that's dependent on supply and demand, and obviously price in the market. Those ones that are tended to drop more last year, maybe they now look all right. So some examples of ones we've put up. The small end Zoe, the Seat Me, but also Mercedes EQA has done very well, and I saw that was a fast selling car off the forecourts as well. So it remains really mixed, that EV world, and we've looked at the data as well, and it's quite a lack of dealers that are stocking EVs. It was quite surprising for us that it was under 20% of independents have actually stocked an EV in the last 6 months, or advertised them anyway when we look at our retail data. So yeah, a little bit of there needs to be more confidence in stocking EVs, and obviously more consumers buying them as we move through the year, because there will be more and more of these coming back over this year and obviously future years.
Yeah, interesting what you say on EV front. I mean, anecdotally, a lot of the dealers I speak to have had their fingers burnt with them over the last year with those huge drops, and haven't stocked them recently as a result. Do you think the bottom of the EV market has been hit when it comes to used car prices, and we're going to start seeing them leveling out and actually more of them going up over the coming months?
It's very very difficult to sort of class EVs all in one basket now. I think there's going to be some volatility. They're going to remain a little bit all over the place. There are certain cars you look at, Teslas, those EQAs, they look really good value for money now. Some BMW product as well. Aspirational EVs, good value. But there are others that still, yeah, they probably still look a little bit expensive, and they've maybe got a little bit more volatility. You've obviously going to have this year as well some really good new car offers because of that ZEV mandate. Where's the incentive for the used car buyer if the new car offers are so good? So um, we're certainly not going to have another year like last year with values, but I think it will be very mixed, and it's very very difficult to say whether values will go up. Across the board, they won't go up. There will be some that go down, some that come up. I think this month is probably a good example of those sort of those proportions that I said. We've dropped 2/3 of stuff, but some have stayed level and some have gone up. I think we're going to continue to see that. The devil's very much in the detail on EVs, and the dealers. They are, even if they're stocking them, no one's going out and buying loads of these. They're being careful. So as volumes increase, that probably needs to improve.
Yeah, interesting on that front, Darren. Thank you for that. And then, so just in summary, you're thinking March is going to be possibly up again for used car prices, and then steady for the rest of the year. Is that right?
Yeah, last year values in March went up by 0.5%. It tends to be a month where values can go up. You don't tend to get those volumes from the part exchanges and fleet returns until towards the end of the month or even into April. So I can't see any reason why demand is going to drop away in the short term. But then once you get into the Easter holidays, then maybe there'll be a little bit more volatility then. But yeah, we're certainly predicting that March cap live will be another strong month. And I would predict a small movement up again.
Darren, as always, thank you very much for the update. I really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing what actually does happen in March when we speak to you next month.
Pleasure.
Nice to see you. That's Derren Martin from Trade Price Experts Cap HPI. Now, for more videos like this one, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Car Dealer Magazine to be notified when videos go out. And for the latest on used car prices, visit our website. It's cardealermagazine.co.uk. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.